The Las Vegas Regional happened this weekend, and today I'm gonna break down the finals of this tournament and one of the best games I've ever watched. Let's go. Our two challengers here are Dylan Salvanera and Zachary Reed. Dylan's team here consists of Ursaluna, Incineroar, Amoonguss, Porygon 2, Gholdengo, and Kilowattrel. Ursaluna is here to just do massive damage after its Flame Orb activates. Depending on how it's trained, it should be able to capitalize off both Porygon 2's Trick Room and Kilowattrel's Tailwind. The Incineroar has an Assault Vest, making it extremely bulky on the special side. It will make Incineroar an absolute wall against Zachary's Alolan Ninetales, and moves like Blizzard and Moonblast will barely touch Incineroar. Dylan's Amoonguss is very standard, giving it a Tera Water to deal with Fire-type moves. Porygon 2 is mostly here just to be extremely bulky and to almost guarantee setting up Trick Room. The Gholdengo set here is super standard, and if it gets off Nasty Plot, things are going to be bad for Zachary. Dylan's final Pokemon is the Kilowattrel we mentioned earlier. It's mostly here to set up Tailwind, but if its stats get lowered, its competitive ability will increase its special attack by 2 stages, and Kilowattrel can be a pretty big threat. Zachary's team starts with Sneasler. It's a pretty standard set and combos extremely well with Rillaboom. The grassy terrain going up causes Sneasler's Grassy Seed to be used, and Sneasler's Unburden ability activates, doubling its speed. Acrobatics move power will also be doubled, and that plus Terra Flying is crazy damage. You need to watch out for that. Kingambit is just here as a dark type attacker. With Swords Dance it can be really threatening, and Sucker Punch should one-shot Gholdengo. Zachary's Incineroar is using the Covert Cloak, ensuring the other Incineroar cannot use Fake Out to flinch Zachary's Incineroar. Basculegion is also here. This one has a Choice Scarf set and is just here to do lots of damage and hit really quickly. Rillaboom does what we said earlier. It helps enable Sneasler as well as threaten pretty decent damage onto the Ursaluna with Grassy Glide and Wood Hammer. It also has high horsepower to help against Gholdengo and Incineroar, but it won't be doing any crazy damage onto them. The final Pokemon is Alolan Ninetales, and this one seems to be focused on dealing damage. With the Life Orb, it should be doing a lot of damage to Zachary's Pokemon, especially the Amoonguss, Kilowattrel, and Ursaluna. Besides that, Dylan's team should be doing pretty good into Zachary's Ninetales. Game 1 starts with Dylan leading Kilowattrel and Ursaluna, with Zachary leading Basculegion and Sneasler. On face value, it seems as if Dylan wants to go for Tailwind here and make his Ursaluna go fast, especially since Zachary doesn't have a way to match that Tailwind. He has no speed control. Zachary's Sneasler does threaten Ursaluna with close combat though, but Dylan can always go for a Terra if that's something he's worried about. The only other worry here is that Basculegion can do a lot of damage to either Pokemon. We do see a Terra Flying from Sneasler, mostly because they're worried about an Earthquake from Ursaluna. Dylan also goes for a double protect here, so he's just scouting to see what happens. Zachary goes for Flip Turn into Kilowattrel and is now locked into that, and Sneasler goes for a Dire Claw. At least Ursaluna is now online. Turn 2, Dylan switches Kilowattrel into Incineroar and goes for Terra Ghost on Ursaluna. Zachary's Sneasler goes into Kingambit, and Basculegion goes for Flip Turn into Ursaluna, switching Rillaboom in. So now we know what all of Zachary's Pokemon are. Facade from Ursaluna also does about 40-45% to Zachary's Kingambit. Zachary does seem to be in the driver's seat here though. Kingambit is threatening Ursaluna with Sucker Punch, and Incineroar is probably just going to get faked out by this Rillaboom, since most Rillabooms are always faster than Incineroars. We do see Incineroar switch into Amoonguss here, and a Protect from Ursaluna, just to play defensively. Amoonguss gets faked out, and Sucker Punch goes into Kingambit. Amoonguss can definitely help out Dylan a lot here, since it can threaten Rage Powder, making Sucker Punch from Kingambit fail, or he can go for Spore, putting Kingambit to sleep. Dylan went for a Rage Powder, and Kingambit didn't actually go for Sucker Punch this time. Rillaboom hit high horsepower, Ursaluna knocked out Rillaboom with Facade, and Kaito Cleave did about half to Amoonguss, activating the Citrus Berry. Sneasler comes back out and is now super fast, threatening a knockout onto Amoonguss with Acrobatics. Sneasler's Acrobatic does take Amoonguss down. Ursaluna outspeeds Kingambit and takes it down with Headlong Rush. Zachary has 2 super fast Pokemon in the late game, and that Basculegion can threaten immensely with the powered up Last Respects. Dylan switches Kilowattrel in, and Zachary switches Basculegion in. Kilowattrel protects, Sneasler's Dire Claw goes into Kilowattrel, and Basculegion is locked into Last Respects. Incineroar should be able to deal with this pretty nicely as long as Dylan has a way to knock out Sneasler. Zachary sees this and protects Sneasler to block Fake Out. Last Respects brings Kilowattrel to Focus Sash, and Thunderbolt brings Basculegion down to super low HP, putting so much pressure on Dylan. He needed that to knock out Basculegion there. Sneasler's close combat does about 80% to Incineroar, and Last Respects finishes it off. Kilowattrel's Thunderbolt takes down Sneasler, but Basculegion outspeeds next turn and wins the game. For game 2, Dylan leads Incineroar and Porygon 2. Zachary leads Basculegion and Kingambit. From my perspective, it seems like Dylan wants to use Fake Out here onto the Kingambit and set up Trick Room with Porygon. But Dylan doesn't do that. He goes on the offensive, using Terra Grass on Incineroar, and Zachary goes for Terra Fire on Kingambit. Flip turn from Basculegion does minimal damage to Incineroar, and Sneasler is out. Knockoff does a third to Kingambit, knocks off the Black Glasses, and Terra Blast from Porygon brings Kingambit low. Kowtow Cleave still does crazy damage onto Incineroar. If Kingambit goes down there, Dylan's in a really good position. Kingambit's Sucker Punch takes down Incineroar on turn 2. Diaclaw from Sneasler poisons Porygon 2, but Trick Room goes up. Amoonguss comes out and can spore any opponent super quickly. Zachary is on the back foot here. He switches Sneasler for Rillaboom since he's worried about a spore into Sneasler. He's correct. Kingambit Kowtow Cleaves brings Porygon to 44 HP, and Terra Blast takes down Kingambit. Basculegion is back out, and Amoonguss switches into Ursaluna, getting faked out by Incineroar. Porygon's Ice Beam connects and does about half to Rillaboom, and Basculegion knocks out Porygon with Flip Turn. There are still 2 turns of Trick Room left. This next turn is the most important of the series. Rillaboom switches into Basculegion, Ursaluna protects, Sneasler protects, and Spore goes into Sneasler. Dylan needs this turn to go well. Sneasler switches into Rillaboom, Basculegion gets spored, and Rillaboom gets facaded, going down. That is probably the best that turn could have went for Dylan, but Trick Room is over now. Zachary's Pokemon are going to be hitting first. Amoonguss goes for Rage Powder to protect Ursaluna from close combat. Basculegion stays asleep. Acrobatics from Sneasler does not knock down Amoonguss, and Headlong Rush takes down Basculegion. Rage Powder plus Headlong Rush takes down Sneasler. And we're going to game 3. I'm just gonna say this now, this game 3 was the best game I have ever seen of Pokemon. This game was so hype. Get ready for it. It starts with Amoonguss and Ursaluna lead from Dylan, and an Incineroar and Basculegion lead from Zachary. Basculegion immediately switches out into Ninetales? And Dylan goes for a double protect. Zachary made a crazy read there, predicting that Dylan would go for a double protect. Dylan is in such a tough spot here, since Blizzard can do so much damage to both of their Pokemon. Amoonguss then switches into Incineroar, and Ninetales goes for a Terra Ghost. Blizzard does so much damage to Ursaluna, and barely anything into Incineroar. That's why Assault Vest Incineroar is crazy, look at that damage. Zachary's Incineroar goes for Taunt into the Amoonguss slot, but since Dylan's Incineroar is Assault Vested, it will do nothing. Headlong Rush also takes Zachary's Incineroar down. Basculegion is back and threatening damage on both Mons. Ursaluna comes back and Porygon 2 is out. Wave Crash from Basculegion takes down Incineroar here, and Ninetales' Blizzard does about a third to Porygon 2. Amoonguss is back and goes for Terra Water. Amoonguss hits a Rage Powder, and Wave Crash does about a third. Moonblast from Ninetales also does a third into Amoonguss. Porygon gets Trick Room up, and it means Amoonguss can start putting Pokemon to sleep. The only issue here for Dylan is if Rillaboom is in the back and switches in. Dylan needs to make a call here. Is Rillaboom in the back? And who would he switch for Rillaboom? Ninetales goes back for Rillaboom, and Dylan is super relieved. Basculegion goes to sleep, and Ice Beam connects into Rillaboom. It does about 60% and gets a critical hit. This was literally the best turn for Dylan here. Grassy Glide hits Amoonguss, and Amoonguss survives with just 7 HP. Pollen Puff goes into Porygon 2, healing it up, and Ice Beam doesn't knock out Rillaboom. Basculegion does wake up though here, and Wave Crash takes down Amoonguss. If Basculegion stays asleep here, it's so bad for Zachary. He needed the wake up right there. There are still 3 turns of Trick Room, and Dylan has Porygon 2 and a low HP Ursaluna against Zachary's low HP Rillaboom and Basculegion, with Ninetales in the back. Basculegion switches into Ninetales, and Ursaluna protects, mostly to prevent Grassy Glide from Rillaboom. Porygon 2 then knocks out Rillaboom with Ice Beam, and we're in a 2v2. Ninetales goes for Protect. Basculegion locks itself into Aqua Jet and takes down the Ursaluna. Can Porygon win the 1v2? Trick Room is over as well. Aqua Jet does 30 damage to Porygon 2, and Blizzard from Ninetales does just over 60. Porygon 2's Ice Beam crits again and does over half to Alolan Ninetales. Aqua Jet from Basculegion hits a crit, and Blizzard brings Porygon 2 down to 4 HP, giving it the chance to use Recover. Aqua Jet plus Blizzard then brings Porygon down to 8 HP. It goes for Recover, and we're back in this cycle. Remember that Ninetales has Life Orb, and its HP is slowly getting drained by this. Basculegion hits Aqua Jet, and Ninetales goes for Encore. Aqua Jet and Blizzard connect. Ninetales is now super low, and Porygon is basically full HP. Ninetales protects on the next turn, and Porygon's Encore ends. Aqua Jet plus Encore again. Porygon 2's Recover PP is almost stalled out. It only has 2 now. Ninetales protects, and we're still here. I know, right? It's getting a bit repetitive now, I know. This is the last recover here. Ninetales fails a double protect. It's okay though. It just wanted to stall and wait for Porygon to have no recover PP left. On the next turn, Aqua Jet comes out from Basculegion, and Ninetales goes for Encore? They must have miscounted the amount of PP Dylan has. Ice Beam takes down Ninetales, and you can see how much this means to him. This is really coming down to the wire. Aqua Jet does 32 damage. Ice Beam does a tiny bit too. This is so close. Aqua Jet does 30. Porygon needs to freeze Basculegion. Ice Beam connects for the 3rd time. No freeze. Aqua Jet again. 2 more hits. That's all that Zachary needs to win this. Dylan is literally begging for the freeze, but doesn't get it. It all comes down to this final turn. Dylan needs to freeze this turn. Aqua Jet brings Porygon down to 10 HP, and Ice Beam freezes. Oh my god. On the next turn, Basculegion stays frozen, and Dylan wins the tournament. And you've just watched one of the closest series you'll ever see. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.